Hello and welcome back to Future Learners. I am your host, Brett Campbell, the Chairman and CEO of Euka Future Learning, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, as always, the founder and the head of education, Ellen Brown. How are you, Ellen?
Very well, thanks, Brett.
Great to hear. I'm going to launch into this episode by giving a bit of a shout out to Elke Cora. Elke Cora found her way over to Apple iTunes and dropped us a 5-star review. So thank you, Elke. She says, love Euka Future Learning. It has literally transformed our teenage daughter's life, giving family time back, reignited our daughter's learning. As a parent juggling work and schooling, the Euka platform has made the whole process from homeschooling registration and reporting and classes online the change we needed. Couldn't recommend the podcast and Euka Future Learning platform highly enough. So thank you very much, Elke. And thank you to the next person listening to this right now who's going to head over to iTunes and drop us a 5-star review as well. We really appreciate that. But if you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, do all of those things. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. That way you'll get notified when we drop our new episodes. So with that in mind, got all the love and hugs out the way. Ellen, let's jump into today's episode. We're going to talk about an exciting topic, actually. For me personally, I get excited about this because I love the whole essence of it. And whilst this episode is going to be catered more towards, let's call it secondary, senior years, I think, if you've got any children in primary school, this will be good for you to have some sort of pre-thinking around it, but also how you can tie this into assisting in those years as well. So that was a bit of a riddle for you to try and solve from what I just shared there. But we're going to be talking about the concept of work experience and part-time jobs and working. And that's something that, very close to my chest in many ways. I had many jobs as a child and as a kid growing up and at high school and so forth. I'm sure we'll get into some of those. But Ellen, I want to talk to you about this topic of work experience and sort of the nuances and how it might, what are the things that parents have to be aware of and to consider, and then sort of what flexibility do we have as it relates to work experience. So I'm going to hand to you to start where you think we should best start as it relates to this topic.
Wonderful. Well, it's an important topic to me because I have teenagers in the house. So I think that homeschooling provides this opportunity to explore the world of work in a way that you don't necessarily get when you're in mainstream school. I know when I was in mainstream school, you were lucky if you got a week of work experience once, but when they're homeschooling, they have an opportunity to try a whole heap of different things when it comes to work experience. And I guess the first place to start is family and friends. That's always the best place to start as far as availabilities and looking around and seeing what opportunities you might have that are close to home.
So let's look at, as a starting point, so, a family embarks on the homeschooling journey. How often and when should they look at having a work experience, I guess you'd say, experience inside their child's learning journey?
So look, every child's going to be different, and it depends why they may have moved into homeschooling. Generally speaking, in the past, it was year 9, grade 9, grade 10 kind of age group, but there's no reason why it has to even be that late. You might have a child that doesn't necessarily find the sitting down and doing the education part a real joy, and you might say that it actually works better for my child if 2 days a week they're going and doing some work with a family or friend, and they're doing that work experience. 2 days a week from grade 7 perhaps. Or you might have a child that has had some anxiety and you think, maybe once a week we might be able to go and do something together or something like that. So we're not talking about, avoiding child labour laws. That's one of those ones we have to talk about, obviously. There are minimum ages and we're not talking about paid work. We're talking about experience. But every child being different. But by grade 9, it's a really good opportunity. Your child is at the age where they're starting to think about, am I going to do some further study with grade 11 and 12? What's out there? If I am going to study in grade 11 and 12, have I got a bit of a focus on what I might be trying to aim for? So it's not just for kids that are finishing school after grade 10. It's actually for kids who are going right through, but also need to think about what options are out there and what does it really look like in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. One of my first experiences of work experience per se is, when I was at school. And yeah, to your point, I think I only ever had like one or two potential opportunities of this. The first time I would have been circa 10, 11 years old. And I went down to the local farming mechanic, and they had big diggers and everything. And I was like, yeah, this will be cool. I'll go and learn how to fix a tractor. For 3 hours, I basically swept the entire building, and I picked up all the ragwort and weeds out on the out on the courtyard. I was tell you what, it wasn't what I thought it was, but it did teach me a couple of things. It was an introduction into the real world of working, the real world of expectations. And I think that those are a couple of real big things as well, because it's, to your point, it's not about just getting out there and sending your kid into a job that they're going to go, oh yeah, I'm going to be a diesel mechanic, and then they come home all upset because they didn't get to touch a bolt or a spanner or a tool, and they basically just swept the entire time. Now, that's obviously not the ideal situation. That is exploiting child labor, to be fair. But in the same token, I think that a good starting point is sitting down and really answering, what are you looking to try and solve by this? Like, what are we looking to really try and produce as an outcome with our child going to explore X, Y, Z? And you mentioned that an easy starting point is, and it certainly is, it's a lower hanging fruit, is go to a friend, family member that you know who might already have a business, and you can sort of get them introduced to that avenue there. But a few things just to tap on, and we could talk about these, and then we could talk about more nuances of, the work experience itself. But, it does a number of things. One is it'll help them build confidence by just being out there and participating in something bigger than their own family unit, right? Because if you've never helping mum and dad in the garden is great and a great thing, but actually going out there, and when you actually help other people, you get a very different sense of satisfaction or accomplishment, right? So it can certainly help build that confidence to be able to get out there and participate in other things that are outside of your household. There's also this concept of preparing your child for independence, right? And know that, hey, this is what this person does. This is actually a job. This is a transactional relationship here. Whilst you're not getting paid, because again, we could talk about the legalities of that. But I'll tell you what, if you're going to your uncle's or your auntie's business, make sure you work out a good cash job. I don't take my advice, but that's what I'd certainly try and do. Some cash money for your time, and learn how to negotiate. But it's literally, an opportunity to start to understand how the world works, right? Because your child would see you or your partner go off to work every single day. They come home, and in their head it's like, oh yeah, dad goes to work. What does he do? To earn money to pay the bills. But then you start talking about taxes, and you start talking about costs associated with other things, and it really opens up a really nice learning environment where it's not just you're doing work experience, and you're doing it because you're going to go and learn some hard labor and teach you a lesson or two. There's a plethora of different outcomes that you can get from it. So I think that's a really good starting point to go, hey, this is what we're looking to do and why we're looking to do it.
I totally agree with what you're saying in that about working out your place in the world and how all of a sudden it helps you to see the world as a bigger place. And, a generation ago, by the time young men were 15 and women were 15 or 16, they were an integral part of a family. They had a role in the family of helping support a family. And so, young men, I guess, that grew up a lot earlier, But we're able to take on a lot of responsibility, different to how we keep our kids quite young for a long time now. But we often find that kids can start having all kinds of behavior issues because they are, young men are often adults in this body, and they're still sitting in, mainstream school have this problem all the time where they're sitting in school and it's, hands on heads and lining up, and we're not, all of this kind of thing. And these are young men or young women that are really capable. And so going out there into the workforce and proving to yourself that you have this value and that you have got these skills and you're developing skills is a real big confidence boost for young people.
Yeah, and if you're, without sabotaging this episode and going down a couple of rabbit holes, if you look at the true sort of pinnacle of where us humans really do deeply aspire to move towards it is that of contribution. It's that ability to be able to deeply give back, and that's the truest upper echelon as you sort of move forward. And interesting enough, the other day, for example, and these are the most meaningful moments. And we're at the petrol store the other day, and this guy in front of me, his card declined, and he was like, he was absolutely obliterated, like upset. Oh no, what am I going to do? I said, mate, I'll pay for your fuel. Paid for his fuel. Sort of walked down. He was just like, for me, that giving that, like it was like $60 of fuel, like that gave me $10,000 return of how it's nice to be able to go and do that. Because about 3 weeks ago, I drove through the Zarafas drive-through, right, getting a coffee, and I also ordered, like a couple of pieces of food, and the order was like $25 or something. And I got up to the window, and the lady goes, "Oh, the car in front of you's already paid for it." And I felt like this person gave me a down payment on my mortgage, because I was just like, oh my God. So that connection of giving, and this is what this is really about. It's, whilst it's masqueraded in work experience, it's about what does this actually produce as an outcome. So there's the input we put in, which is, I'm going to this thing and I'm going to sweep the floor, right? Like I did. Swept the floor, cleaned it, probably the best that factory has ever been cleaned. And the output of that was obviously producing and doing all the work and making it clean. But the outcome was, I actually went back to them the week after and asked them for a job. I got a job for $4 an hour, and I would go after school every day. I would go to this factory. The first thing I'd do is pick up the broom and I'd clean up their factory. I'd literally take about an hour and a half, and I got like $6 for it. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I took advantage of this opportunity. Now, of course, I'm like, well, this isn't the job I really want to do. No one wants to sweep up floors, right? But I'll tell you what it did do was, when I went into my apprenticeship with, I was 16, I got asked nicely to leave high school, I'll put it that way. And I was a cabinet maker. Guess what the first job I was in a sawdust factory, basically, in a cabinet making factory. You're a broom technician. Don't worry, I've got experience on the broom. I know how to, there's an art to actually sweeping a floor up. And if someone can teach you and show you how to sweep a floor, it's like you can actually do it really well. And it can help progress and propel you to the next level until you're no longer the floor sweeper, right? So I think it's the experience that is gained, right? It's the outcome that we can produce from this thing. And my advice would be, again, sitting down with your child. And this isn't about trying to find their dream job, although it could be a great thing, like maybe they want to become a veterinarian, and maybe they go and volunteer at the local, animal shelter or something like that. And yep, their first job would probably be picking up poo, right? It's like, you're not going to go and get to do all the fun activities, although there might be some of that mixed in. But it can give them also a sense of, what, do I really am I just caught up because I love animals, versus could I see myself in here doing this and seeing that and being a part of that? And it can help give insight as well into what you're doing. This certainly isn't about work experience. Go and find your dream job so you know what you're going to do when you leave high school, or when you graduate, or when you as an adult. This is more about, what life skills can I learn from this process? And the more you do it, because I asked you earlier, how often should you do it? And the beautiful thing that you said with homeschooling is that you can do it as often as you like. You can go to as many different places as you like. It's about how many touch points of experience can we get from this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you know what? The difference between work experience and getting a part-time job is exactly what you said, where work experience opens doors that wouldn't be open for a part-time job. So you're not going to get a part-time job at the vets necessarily. There's vet nurses that do all those jobs, but you will get an opportunity to do work experience. For example, one of my boys decided he might like to do race motorbike mechanics. Now, you're not going to go get a part-time job there at KTM because that kind of place, will hire people that are experienced. But just going and saying, look, I'm looking to just do a week. And he did sweep floors and he did degrease things all day long or those kinds of things. But what he did get to do is he got to see, what does a mechanics do there? What does a day in the life look like? And that is invaluable. You can't find that on YouTube, You want to actually experience, what does it feel like to be part of that team? And is that something I'm interested in? And, sometimes young ones will say to you, oh, yeah, but, I'm going to be there all week and I'm going to get nothing from it. Like, I'm not going to get any dollars. And I say, people are at university for 4 years. It's costing them $50,000 to be there, and they still don't have a job, but they've had to pay for that learning. And so you can go there and it doesn't cost you something. So it's trying to help them understand that work experience is like a free opportunity to step into something. And if you do a great job, it's so interesting how all of a sudden these people think, this kid's got something. And then sometimes a part-time job will come from that anyway.
Yeah, and that's a big unlock as well, is prove yourself first. And I think that's such a strong value to have as a human being, of going, you know what, don't expect someone just to give you something just because you believe you're entitled to it. Put your best foot forward and show them, give them a reason so valuable that they cannot refuse your offer. So when I was 11, one of my, I guess you'd say, first jobs, under the table, of course, because it was cash money back then. But I'd door knock up and down. I'd walk up and down my street. And this was born out of not because I wanted to work, or nor did I want work experience. This was, I wanted money so I can go down to the fish and chip shop and I can play Street Fighter and I can buy $1 worth of jet plane lollies. That was my goal that I was aiming towards. And we didn't have a spare $1 or $2 to go, just thrown out to me. So my mum was like, if you want to, you're going to go and earn the money yourself. And I'm like, okay, what can I do? Because I don't know. Well, what do you know how to do? And from like age 10, I'd started mowing our lawns, begrudgingly, of course, because in New Zealand, it was like a 1/4 acre section. So they're quite big sections. And I would always leave it till it went too long and it would be 5 times as hard. And my mum told me that every time. And I'd never learned the lesson until, it took me probably 20, 30 lawns in to learn the lesson that just do it more regularly, Brett. It'll be a lot easier, Anyway, so I'd door knock and I'd literally, my sales pitch was, hi, my name's Brett. Do you have any work for me? And they're like, no. Next door, hey, my name's Brett. Do you have any work for me? Literally go up and down my street. Next week, I'd go back again. Persistent. I'm like, hey, just wondering if you had any jobs pop up. No, I don't. I literally went through my entire street like twice, and then I was like, this isn't working. Knock on the door again. Hey, I know I've knocked on your door a few times, but I just want to let you know, I have a lawnmower, and I noticed that your lawns are a little bit long. I can actually mow them. If I do a good job, will you let me do the lawns for you? I only charge $5 for a small lawn or $10 for a big lawn. And one of the ladies was like, oh, okay. And then I did a good job. Like I did a supreme job. I made sure of it because I was looking for that extra job and the consistency. So then I'm like, oh my God, if I mow this lawn every 2 weeks, I'm earning $5. Like that basically pays for my lollies throughout the week. But then I did one and I got a taste of it. I'm like, oh, I've got to go get another lawn. I've got to get another lawn. And it got to a stage where at the sort of height of it, I had about 6 lawns down my street that I'd mow. So I couldn't really play with my mates after high school too often because I've got to go mow the lawn. I've got to go mow the lawn, right? But what was funny, because what this then taught me was I was putting the lawnmower back in the garden shed at the end of, I did 2 lawns after school. It was like 6:30 at night. It was starting to get dark over there in New Zealand at the time. It was sort of winterish. And it took me like 2.5 hours to do it. I was exhausted. And I'm pushing the lawnmower into the garden shed. And my stepdad, he comes up to me, he goes, oh, how's the lawns going? I said, oh, it's going really good. I had like $15 cash in my pocket. I was just like, look at this. This is so cool. And And he goes, where are you getting the petrol from for the lawnmower? I said, I'm using our petrol. He goes, our petrol? He goes, you're earning money now. What do you, like, that costs money to pay for the petrol. I'm paying for the petrol for you to do your lawns. I was like, oh, well, and immediately it was sort of my first ever negotiation in business. I was like, well, what if I just mow our lawn for free, right? And you pay for the petrol. Now, our lawn was a large lawn, and it would have been $10. So I'd done a negotiation, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this, without me having to give up any of my money, I'm going to make this trade. And then he's like, okay, cool. Yep, that's a deal. Shook on it. Then he goes, oh, you want to go and fill up the petrol tank? And I took the little petrol can, went down to the petrol shop, and this was before petrol was crazy prices. Now, it cost me $3.30, because I remember looking at it going, it was my first light bulb moment of where my negotiation went wrong, because I looked at the lawnmower, the price was like $3.30 to fill up this tin. I was like, I did both of those lawns today, and I only used half a tank. I'm like, so I could really get 4 lawns out of one can, which is $3.30. And I've just given up $10 worth of lawns. I was like, oh, what a bad deal. And I went to try and renege on the deal. He goes, no, he shook my hand. That there taught me a much more valuable lesson of, like, I shook on the agreement. Don't come back and take the agreement back straight away just because it suits me. So it taught me to go into the agreement and look at things now through a different, look at all the different options. So I share that story because that was literally in its entirety, and there's lots more to it, but it taught me so much about so much. It taught me about rejection of people saying, no, I don't have work for you. No, I don't have work for you. And it took me to go, well, what if I do this? I can weed your garden. I can do this. I can paint a wall. Like these are the things that I can do. Wasn't much of a skill set, but I'm here to do it. I'm prepared, and once you start performing, people will want you to do a lot more.
Yeah. And it really does come down to desire. Like, you had a motivator there of money, and that's obviously a great one when it comes to young people. Some of them have more desire than others, and some of them are more introverts and extroverts, of course. And so, your role as a parent in work experience, you have to be you can't force them to go do work experience. It's not going to work out. So it has to be that your child has said, I wish I could do such and such. I'd love to do this when I'm finished. And then to be able to go alongside them and say, well, how about, do you want to send an email to these people? Helping them out. Like, don't expect that they're just going to go out there and get that themselves. Just helping them out as a parent. And it also helps, say the KTM example, it helped the company know that there was a parent behind the child, and that, it's part of homeschooling, that we have this opportunity, and just giving them context, because otherwise it's this random kid. And your children need that kind of support. It's the first time of them venturing out into the world. So don't be afraid as a parent to help them put together an email, have them, help you with it and script it, and have it from them, or even from you and them together, so that it gives the company the idea that there is a parent that's, watching over what's going on there, and that gives them confidence. So when you're looking at starting out work experience, the first thing is, yes, look at, why does the child want to do it? If they just want to do it because they just don't love sitting and doing their school, they want to just put their schoolwork onto 3 days, or they just want to take a week and explore, saying they're two different things. If it's, I want to regularly be out doing something, maybe it's family and friends is a great way of doing that. And, one of my kids has found that working for a family member is great. He hasn't got much idea of what he wants to do later. So that's fulfilling that need for him. Whereas there's another one that's got a real idea of what he wants to do. He wants to try as many of things in that area as he can. And so we have to go beyond family and friends. And that's where I've helped him. And he's become more confident now in reaching out, because he can say, I spent a week doing this, and I learned all these things. I'd love to spend a week. So he's got something to build on now and launch out into saying, okay, I've done a few things in work experience. Do I want to fulfill my job? Is my job going to come from that? Is that something, and he's had offers. That's interesting that he's had offers come out. He's going, that wasn't the thing. I can't tell you how happy I am that he hasn't gone down and started either apprenticeships or university degrees on something he hadn't tried out, because a lot of kids do it. They'll get to the end of uni and go, didn't actually want to do that anyway. How often do you meet an adult that's got a degree for something that they're not working in? So it's a really important opportunity, really.
It's a interesting point you make there, because when I got kicked out of high school, I was given the mandate of, you got to get a job or else you're going to start, you're going to have to go and fend for yourself. Like, if you don't get a job and start contributing now that you're not at school, you're going to be out on your own 2 feet. Now, upon reflection, I know my mum never would have done that, but it was a serious enough thing for me to go, shit, I better get a job then. And I took up the first job that was there. There was literally one apprenticeship in my little hometown. And I took it up because, at school I loved woodwork, and it was sort of, the cabinet making. But I knew, and this is a valuable lesson, is I knew pretty much straight away that I knew that wasn't the thing that I really wanted to do. And this sort of goes back to sometimes in life, and this is, I think, if there's a series of really important lessons I'd love to share with every sort of young, evolving sort of teenage, as you're evolving into those early years, is that there's going to be lots of things you do in your life that you just do not enjoy. I mean, adults do it right now. You might not enjoy your workplace right now, but it's the means to the end, and it's providing the outcome for you and your family, et cetera, et cetera. But as a young person, it's really important to know that, hey, you actually don't have to deeply, thoroughly enjoy this, right? What you need to know is why you're doing it, the outcomes of what you're doing and where that can lead to, and how you can, and what lessons you can derive along the way. That is the key to it all, because, and it's easy to look back when you've gone through certain experience to go, oh yeah, that all makes sense. That's the stepping stone to this, to that, to that, to that. But I know as well as it's the apprenticeship world, the evolution of the internet and social media and remote working and AI and so forth. It's a lot of jobs now are sitting behind a keyboard. I'm glued to my seat pretty much 12 hours a day, and I come from a hard labor type background of what that was my sort of introduction to work, But the point that I'm making there is there's going to be lots of things that your child does that they're not going to enjoy. And it's very important for us as parents to be able to let them know that and set the expectations, like set the bar pretty low. Don't set the bar so high that this is a make or break. And you might go to the local veterinarian and your child might have had a bad experience at that specific veterinarian because the vet said something or the admin lady said something to her that was like, oh, that didn't come across right. And now her potential dream for being a veterinarian nurse or a vet itself is diminished because of that one experience. So very, very important that we set our children up for success with expectations. And this is just one of many different experiences that you can end up having, right? So it's very important to, after they've done the work experience, sit down with them each day, whether they're doing it for one day or whether they're doing it for several days in a row or whether they're doing it consistently over a period of time. Sit down at the end of each day with them and assess what went really well. What were the things that you really liked? Oh, nothing. There has to be something. Like what was it specifically? And then what didn't you like? What would you have preferred to happen? What could you have done better? Like what rating would you give yourself out of 10 as it relates to listening? What rating would you give yourself out of 10 as it relates to the effort that you put in? What rating would you give yourself out of 10? What do you think they would rate you out of 10 of your effort? And just by going through that in itself, just some light questioning, your child will learn so much about the value of their input, which again leads to an end outcome for themselves and of course the business and people that they're working for and doing this experience with. So
you made actually a really good point there about social media, and one of the traps that I have seen is that, kids are watching influencers and they're watching people who are doing their dream job, turn your passion into work. And that's great, but it's definitely not what most people's experience of work is. And so I think it's really important the interesting thing is in this social media world where a lot of young people are actually not interested in working hard. Like they're getting this message that you can be traveling around the world and just making videos of yourself and earning a lot of money. And some people do, but it's rare. What you'll find is that if you have a young person who you've talked through, what does it look like? How would this person see you if you were, what value can you bring to the company? Even if you're sweeping the floor, what could you do to make sure that you're looking for things extra than what the boss has asked you to do? That kind of message, they stand out. Your kids stand out because it isn't easy to find young people who have got a good work ethic. So work experience gives them the opportunity to develop that. And the interesting thing is, because it's not hard to stand out and do a good job, they're getting feedback from the boss very often, oh, how well you're doing and, how surprised they were at you doing those little extra things that you weren't asked. And that just builds that self-confidence. Quite amazing.
Yeah, and then they'll see the outcomes of doing that, and then they might start doing that at home as well, right? In the essence of going above and beyond, and to your point, we need to set our children up for success, right? I talked about what you do at the end of the homeschooling, but before they went in there and approached the new business, and it was they're about to go and spend their hour or two, during the day to participate. You need to sit down and go, okay, what does success look like for us here? Well, what do we want the boss of this company or your uncle or whomever it is that you're going to work with? What do you want them to say about you at the end of this? Do you want them to say that you're a really hard worker? You went above and beyond, you did all these things. It's like, yeah, I'd love for them to say that. Okay, well, how can we help architect that as an outcome? What do we need to do? What are the inputs we need to do? Well, we need to go above and beyond. If they say sweep the floor, you need to make sure every corner and crevice is swept. But not only that, sweep the walls, look for cobwebs in the corners of the roofs. Like that, those are the type of things to help set them up. Because you're right, Alan, and it even in this day and age, so Euka, for example, like when we put a role out, we get anywhere from 600 to 1,000 people apply for a role. And sad to say, you don't have to go too far above and beyond to stand out from the majority of people who apply for a role. Like even presenting a CV or a cover letter or going the extra mile and sending a little video of yourself, like those things, you'll stand out from 95% of other people. So the bar is no longer that high where it's like, oh my God, how would I ever get this? If your child really wants to work somewhere or get into a specific area, you've just got to sit down and go, okay, what plan would we need to create? Because I can tell you as an employer I'm very impressed by people who go above and beyond, who do the things that most people don't. And that, I believe, is the biggest lesson that we can learn from, participating in work experience itself. It's all the other lessons that we can get along the way that are going to come from that. And it's positioning yourself as a person that someone wants to pick on their team, if that makes sense.
When you're deciding whether your child's ready for work experience or not, and you're thinking, are they? General rule of thumb is they'll let you know because they're interested. And I can put my hand up and say I'm guilty of thinking, no, this one's not ready, definitely not ready. Maybe it's because it's my youngest, And I was thinking, oh no, she can't, the room's not clean and, instructions aren't necessarily followed real well. So how could she possibly? But it's so interesting what they can achieve outside home. It doesn't necessarily carry into the home, but it was just fascinating to see her embrace the job at the bakery and be very neat and tidy and very punctual and, all the things that you think, you can be droning on about those things at home and it's not necessarily happening. So I guess that's an encouragement to think just because you're seeing a certain thing at home or what your child's capable of doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're capable of outside home. So if they're asking, then they're obviously going to be ready to give something like that a try. And I think that will be a great way. Now, the other thing we really need to address is that some companies will require the child to have insurance of some kind. And it comes up every now and again That's because when a child goes from school to work experience, the school has insurance that they take with them. So good tip for that as a homeschooler. There's a company called, or a business called the Australian Homeschooling Association. It's based in Victoria, Australian Homeschooling Association. And they actually have a lot of information about work experience on their site. But when you join them, you actually gain some insurance that you can use as your work experience insurance. So it's a non-for-profit company. They have a lot of good resources, but one thing that's important is that when you join them, part of their membership is this work experience insurance. And so you'll be able to go onto a link that's on their website and get straight in and organize that. So it's not all businesses that require that. A lot of businesses have their own insurance, but if you're asked, that's good to know that you can tick that box if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely make sure you do your due diligence as you're entering into, the work experience realm. But hopefully today we'll wrap it up there, Alan, on this one. I think we've covered a fair bit as it relates to that, and if at any we've been able to highlight the benefits and the carry-on effects and carry-on benefits that will be achieved from just exposing your children to such an environment. What you said earlier was that's simply what you've enabled yourself to put up with. Your child will always push the barriers. Right? Day one at work, they're going to perform to their highest ability until they know what the limitations of what they can and cannot get away with. I say that to Emily all the time. It's like Ayla plays around and then I'll come inside and she's like, she's been doing that for the last 20 minutes, not listening to me. And I might say something. I'm like, because my parameters of what I put up with are a little bit tighter than your parameters, right? And she's just playing to your parameters. She's going to get away with it. So she'll play to it. So that's called human evolution, and I absolutely love that. So, all right. Thank you, Alan. Great topic, and hopefully you've gotten value from this. Our dear listener, please head over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, drop all of the buttons, do all that you can. Give us a 5-star review if you've gotten value from this. And, of course, make sure that you send this episode to anyone else that you think would benefit. And until next time, have an amazing morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is that you're consuming this, and we'll see you on the next episode.